He ruined my life. I can only hope he ruins his own, which I'm sure he's doing a good job of.
What angers me even more than this particular individual not doing the right thing is the way in which the Law Society have simply washed their hands of this.
This is the story of Fred Piechnik and his family. It's a strange and tragic one. Tragic because the actions of his lawyer almost destroyed his life.
And of course, he has been caught in court before, drunk. And of course, we're the ones that have got the punishment.
Drunk.
Mr. Vigar. And strange because after 8 years of torment, his strongest ally is also a lawyer and the Premier of the state.
It's destroyed him financially. It's to some degree meant that the future that he wanted for himself and his wife and his family, he can't see anymore, all because he ran into a drunken, incompetent lawyer.
Stranger still because the Premier lays the blame for Fred's predicament at the heart of the legal profession, the Law Society.
I make no bones about what I'm doing. I'm shaming the legal profession. Fred's losses might become the concern of the Law Society rather than these dismissive letters.
Fred had been a successful builder but swapped that for the life of a farmer, and life was good until this pump.
It's hard to believe that something as small, inconsequential as this could have led to such a catastrophe.
Totally agree with you.
And shouldn't have, should it?
It should never have done so, no.
When in 2009 a dispute arose over faults with the pump's installation, Fred's Adelaide solicitor recommended an old schoolmate, Narra Court lawyer Jeff Vigar, act for him. The result, a disaster.
Fred, what does this cost you and your family?
It's cost us a lot of heartache. Financially, we've lost about $2.5 million in relation to what's happened.
Vigar was unfortunately an alcoholic and thus incompetent, and critically, he failed to turn up to court when it mattered most.
I happened to be driving back to Adelaide. I stopped at the service station. My car didn't work and I thought, what's wrong? So I paid cash for some fuel. Got home and there was a letter in the mail that I was a bankrupt. That's the first I knew about it.
So you were completely ignorant of the fact that you'd been made a bankrupt?
That was the first time I found out, yes.
Suddenly bankrupt, everything came to a halt. Credit was suspended, cash flow stopped, the banks moved in, and Fred was forced into a series of crippling fire sales.
We don't have a home in Adelaide anymore. We've lost all that. We've lost the mother-in-law's house. We've lost the farm across the road. Everything we've sold, we've had to devalue so we could get the money quickly.
Ironically, he also had to sell his water licence, making the pump that started this whole catastrophe of no further use. To survive, Fred was forced to turn to mercenary money lenders.
We borrowed $250,000 for a 3-month period. It cost us $75,000 in interest alone.
His only hope of recovery was to sue Jeff Vigar.
I think, in fairness to Jeff Vigar, from day one, he admitted his guilt, and this is where the problem then started with law claims.
Law Society members pay for professional indemnity insurance, administered by a branch of the Society called Law Claims. It may appear to be there to safeguard clients. The reality is something else.
Law Claims never actually spoke to us. It was done through their lawyers, and really we were just treated like shit, to be honest.
So they employed lawyers to represent Jeff Vigar against you, and yet he was the one at fault.
He was definitely the one at fault, yes.
Surely this should have been dealt with. Immediately they knew that Vigar had admitted failing you.
Correct, yes.
Had it been, there'd probably be no story. But the Vigar Law Claims lawyers accused Fred of negligence himself and threatened to stay the proceedings unless he made an offer to settle. despite having handed over a 160-page report detailing his losses.
That report cost me $58,000. That report said at the time that we had lost $600,000 for that first 12-month period.
But that was considered inadequate, and a second report had to be commissioned.
The second report that was done, that was for a further 12 months, had indicated that we had lost just over $1.2 million.
So it had doubled in that time.
It had doubled within 2 years.
Of course, Fred was obliged to hire lawyers himself, and his costs continued to mount.
Legal costs amounted to well over $300,000. In just the legal term and report costs, we spent over $600,000.
Law claims lawyers maintained Fred's finances at the time of his bankruptcy were in a precarious state, and being an inexperienced farmer, he was bound to fail anyway, regardless of Vigar.
Everything we did, they tried to defend by saying that we weren't going to make a profit, we were going to go bankrupt anyway, and that's been their issue.
After 4 years, Fred could no longer continue, and following mediation decided to settle.
There were 5 different barristers at mediation. We'd already been told not to say anything. The first smart comment that came from one of the barristers is, "Oh, you've still got a boat." And I was quite amazed.
To law claims, the settlement was well above what they thought it should be.
I'm not allowed to disclose the settlement figure apparently, but it doesn't cover even the lawyers' and accountants' fees. That's the offer we had to accept.
Though Vigar had ceased practising, Fred wanted him struck off. It took him a year and a half to get the matter before the Legal Practitioners Conduct Commissioner, Greg May, and another year to deliver a finding.
And I believe now he will be barred for life and can never practice again, which would protect other people.
In finding against him, the Commissioner also found,
"I am confident that the practitioner's negligence was at the very least a substantial cause of his client's initial bankruptcy, and at worst the sole cause."
This finding gave Fred fresh hope in his attempts to recover what he believed he'd actually lost, and he renewed his pleas to politicians for help.
Out of all the politicians I wrote to, and it would have been probably 30 different politicians, Jay Weatherall responded, Nick Xenophon responded.
It was the Premier who was best able to offer assistance.
I think this is a spectacular case. What we're talking about here is somebody that was manifestly incapable of practising.
But there was a further bombshell to come, which has the Premier declaring war on the Law Society and putting taxpayers' money into this fight.
I think the Law Society should be ashamed of itself, frankly. I think they have responsibilities here that they've abdicated.